Hey everyone, so let's continue working with arrays. We're going to do a little bit of file I/O, right? So file input and file output. And so the first topic will be file output. In order to write information from an array into a file and save it on your hard drive. So the first thing we want to do is work with the import Java IO dot star. We're going to import this package, and so that we can work with the print writer class. Print, and a print writer will allow us to write to a file, and we're just going to call this file array.txt. Anytime you do file IO, you have to deal with exceptions, and for now, to suppress this exception, we're just going to say throws IO exception, and that handles that exception for now. Let's go ahead and create our array. Ten, 20, 30, 40, 50. And we're just going to use a loop, and we're going to use that loop to print it to a file. So we're going to say for int I in numbers. Use a shorthand loop here. Actually, let's give it a shot. We're going to say pw.println I. And let's run this. And it's going to print the output to a file instead. Let's search for that file. It's on the text document. Didn't write it because we didn't close the file. Don't forget to close the file, right? So open, write, and close. Let's try that again. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So that is file output, and arrays and file input. Let's create an array to read into. And let's just, because we know there's 5 elements, we'll keep this example pretty straightforward. Say we're going to read all 5. We're going to work with the file class. We're going to call it file equals new file. And we're going to read array.text. So we created it here, and we're going to read from it here. And to read from a file, we're also working with a scanner class. We're going to call this input file equals new scanner. Pass it the instance of the file class that we created. And we're going to use a loop while input file has next, and I'm going to create a counter variable, and our counter is less than input array.length. We are going to assign our input array sub I equals input file dot next int. Because we're reading integers, we're going to increment our control variable, and we're going to close our input file dot close. Now input array should have 5 values, and if we do for int I in our array, input array. We'll just call something else x. So it should write to a file again, and it's going to read that file and print it to the screen. And there we go. So we can see the input array holds the 5 values. So we have done file output using arrays and file input using arrays. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to work with arrays and passing them to and from a method. And this is going to return an array from a method, right? So let's write the method first. So let's go outside of main. And we're going to write a public static method that returns an array, a double array, and we're going to call this get numbers. And inside of here, we'll create our array called nums. 1.1, 2.2, 3.3. And return nums. So this is how we return a value, an array from a method. So back inside of main, you can see here we're inside of main. Inside of, we need to call this method. So we're going to create a double called array of doubles. Equals, and we're going to call get numbers. And you can see that now the array of doubles will hold the values that were returned out of this method. And to demonstrate that, we're going to use a shorthand for loop. Got to have matching data types. Now they match. So our print line should print out these values. Just for readability, I'm going to say this is the data that was returned from the method. Demonstrate that. Oh, it prints it out multiple times. Let's put it outside of the loop so it just prints it once. There we go. So there's our new information there. So that's returning an array reference from a method. The next thing, we did talk a little bit about string arrays, but it's important to work with them a little bit more, and let me explain why. Here, if I create a string array called names equals new string, and we're going to have 5 names. This new keyword will create the array, but we have not created the strings themselves at this point, right? So to create the strings themselves is, as we showed before, names sub 0 equals Bob. Name sub 1 3, 2, 3, and 4. 2, 3, 4. Jack and Jill and Chris. Or you could work with them in the shorthand notation, right? String another names list equals, and this is the shorthand, Charles, Evan, Pat. Oh, I see what I did. I didn't include my brackets. Sometimes I move fast and I make mistakes. So this is we've seen this before, but now we need to work with some of the methods of array elements. And so what I'm referring to is, for example, strings have methods like toUpperCase and char@, that we want to work with when they're stored in arrays. So if I wanted Bob, but I wanted them all capital letters, print line, names sub 0 dot, and here is where we can find the methods of the string class. And so you use the array name, the element position dot toUpperCase, and that's how we can work with methods of arrays. So go ahead and run that. Array out of bounds because there's only 4 of them. Let's do that again. So you got Bob toUpperCase. If I wanted to say use another method, name sub1 char@ position 2. So name sub 1 is Bill and L is at position 2. So you should see that prints out the letter L. I believe that's a good stopping point. So thanks for following along, and see you at the next one.